What if I told you that right now, as you watch this, your brain is actively destroying your memories? Not through decay, not through damage, through deliberate, calculated deletion. For over a century, scientists believed forgetting was a failure, a bug in the system. Memories simply faded like writing in sand, worn away by time. They were completely wrong. In the last 2 decades, neuroscientists have discovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about the human mind. Your brain contains dedicated molecular machinery designed specifically to erase memories. Not accidentally, intentionally. And here's what's truly disturbing. This erasure is happening constantly. Every hour, every minute, your brain is running a delete protocol on your own life. But before you panic, consider this. The people who can't forget, who remember every moment of every day in perfect, vivid detail, would give anything to have what you have, the ability to let go. This is the story of active forgetting. And by the end, you'll understand why the delete button in your brain might be its most important feature. The old theory of forgetting was elegant in its simplicity. German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus established it in 1885. He spent months memorizing nonsense syllables, meaningless combinations of letters, then tested how quickly he forgot them. His famous forgetting curve showed memory declining rapidly at first, then leveling off. The explanation seemed obvious. Memories are physical traces in the brain. Like footprints in snow, they simply fade over time. Neurons weaken, connections decay. Nothing actively happens. You just lose things. This passive decay model dominated psychology for over 100 years. It felt intuitive. It matched our experience of gradually losing details from childhood, of faces becoming fuzzy, of names slipping away. But there was a problem. A massive, glaring problem that scientists kept running into. Sometimes, forgotten memories came back, completely, perfectly, in vivid detail. If memories had truly decayed, if the physical traces were gone, this should be impossible. You can't unmelt a snowflake. So what was actually happening? The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. Fruit flies. In 2012, researchers at Scripps Research Institute discovered something remarkable in the tiny brains of Drosophila. A specific protein called RAC1 wasn't just associated with memory. It was actively dismantling it. When scientists blocked RAC1, the flies remembered things longer. When they boosted it, memories vanished faster. This wasn't decay. This was demolition. Further research revealed an entire molecular toolkit for forgetting. Dopamine neurons that trigger memory erasure. Proteins that physically disassemble synaptic connections. Enzymes that undo the cellular changes that encode memories. And here's what stopped neuroscientists cold. These mechanisms are incredibly similar across species. From flies to mice to humans. Evolution has preserved the machinery of forgetting for hundreds of millions of years. That only happens when something is absolutely essential. Your brain doesn't just let memories fade. It hunts them down. It takes them apart. And it does this on purpose. But why would evolution build a self-destruct button into our most precious asset? To understand why forgetting matters, you need to meet the people who can't do it. Jill Price contacted researchers in 2000 with an unusual complaint. She could remember every day of her life since age 14. Give her any date, and she could tell you what day of the week it was. What she did, what was on television, what the weather was like. Her memory was perfect. It was also, in her words, a burden. Scientists named her condition highly superior autobiographical memory, or HSAM. Since Jill, about 60 people worldwide have been confirmed to have it. You might think they'd be grateful. They're not. Jill describes her memory as like a split screen. I'll be talking to someone and seeing something, and in my head I'm answering in the past, Every negative experience stays vivid forever. Every embarrassment, every loss, every cruel word someone said to her 30 years ago plays back in high definition. She cannot let go. She cannot move on. And here's what researchers discovered that changes everything about how we understand memory. People with HSAM aren't better thinkers. In many cognitive tests, they perform the same as everyone else. Or worse. This is where forgetting reveals its secret power. Creativity, generalization, abstract thinking itself. Consider what happens when you learn. You experience specific events. A particular dog growled at you on a Tuesday in 2019 on Maple Street. If you remembered only that imperfect, isolated detail, you would know nothing useful. You would only know about that one dog on that one day. But forgetting allows something magical. It strips away the irrelevant details. The day, the street, the specific dog. What remains is a pattern. Dogs that growl might bite. Be careful around growling dogs. This is abstraction. This is generalization. This is thought itself. Researchers at the University of Glasgow demonstrated this beautifully. When subjects were allowed to forget irrelevant details, their ability to recognize patterns improved dramatically. Their creative problem-solving increased. Remembering everything meant they couldn't see the forest for the trees. Every tree was too vivid, too specific, too present. Forgetting is not the enemy of learning. Forgetting is what makes learning possible. Think of your brain like a house. Every memory is an object you bring inside, without ever throwing anything away. What happens? The house becomes a nightmare. You can't find anything. You can't move. Every decision requires pushing through mountains of irrelevant junk to find what matters. This is the life of someone with HSAM. But it's worse than clutter. Because memories aren't passive objects. They're active. They compete for attention. They intrude into consciousness. Every time your brain retrieves a memory, that memory doesn't play back like a video. It reconstructs itself. And during reconstruction, all those perfectly preserved competing memories interfere. Imagine trying to remember your current phone number while 50 old phone numbers scream at equal volume. That's what total recall actually feels like. Forgetting is your brain's librarian. It's constantly asking, what matters? What can go? What's taking up space that we need for something more important? Without that librarian, the library becomes unusable. Here's something that will change how you think about sleep. One of the most important functions of sleep is forgetting. During slow-wave sleep, your brain replays the day's experiences. But it's not just recording them to long-term storage. It's selecting. It's editing. It's deciding what to keep and what to discard. The synaptic homeostasis hypothesis suggests that sleep systematically weakens less important neural connections while preserving important ones. You wake up with a cleaner, more organized mind, not because you added memories, but because you subtracted them. Studies show that sleep-deprived individuals don't just form fewer new memories. They fail to forget properly. Their brains fill with noise. Irrelevant details stick around. Performance on learning tasks actually gets worse because they can't clear the clutter. This might be why sleep deprivation leads to confusion, poor judgment, and eventually hallucinations. Without forgetting, your brain can't maintain the signal-to-noise ratio necessary for clear thought. Sleep isn't just rest for your brain. It's garbage collection day. Now we come to perhaps the most profound benefit of forgetting: emotional healing. Trauma researchers have discovered something crucial. When we retrieve a traumatic memory, there's a brief window where that memory becomes unstable, editable. This process is called reconsolidation. Therapies like EMDR and prolonged exposure work partly by exploiting this window. Each time the memory is recalled and processed in a safe context, it can be restored with less emotional intensity. The memory doesn't disappear. The facts remain, But the visceral terror, the overwhelming emotional charge, these can fade, can be actively forgotten. People with HSAM often struggle with trauma more than average. Not because they experience more trauma, but because their brains can't do this emotional editing. The terror stays as vivid as the day it happened, forever. The ability to forget emotional intensity is not weakness. It's not denial. It's how humans survive and eventually thrive after unbearable experiences. Time heals all wounds, we say, but time doesn't do anything. Forgetting does the healing. Every decision you make depends on forgetting. This sounds wrong. Shouldn't more information mean better decisions? Consider the famous case of a patient known as S. Studied by Russian psychologist Alexander Luria. S could remember essentially everything. His memory was so detailed that he struggled with simple tasks. Reading was difficult because every word triggered cascades of associations and memories. Recognizing faces was hard because he remembered every expression a face had ever made. And they all competed with the face in front of him. He couldn't hold a job. He couldn't have normal conversations. His perfect memory was a prison of infinite irrelevant detail. Decision-making requires reducing options, focusing on what matters, ignoring what doesn't. If you remembered every meal you'd ever eaten in perfect detail, choosing lunch would become impossible. The bad ones would be too vivid. The good ones would create impossible expectations. You'd be paralyzed by data. Forgetting is not losing information. It's filtering information. And filtering is what makes action possible. Here's the deepest truth about memory and forgetting. Your sense of self depends on both. You are not simply a collection of memories. You are a story. And stories require editing. Imagine if you remembered every version of yourself equally. Every stupid thing you said at 15. Every cruel thought you had at 20. Every moment of weakness, failure, and shame, in vivid, present tense detail. How would you construct a coherent identity? How would you believe you'd changed? People with HSAM often report feeling stuck in the past. They struggle to feel that they've grown. Because growth requires the old self to fade, to become a story you tell rather than an experience you live. Forgetting allows the narrative of self to have chapters, to have arcs, to have the sense that you've overcome things, learned things, become someone different. Without forgetting, there is no character development. There is only an ever-growing present tense containing every version of you that ever existed. Screaming at equal volume. Evolution rarely makes mistakes that last hundreds of millions of years. The molecular machinery of active forgetting is ancient and universal. It exists in almost every species with a nervous system complex enough to form memories. This tells us something profound. Forgetting isn't a limitation that evolution couldn't solve. Evolution chose forgetting. The ability to remember everything was probably possible. Some species have remarkable memory abilities. But generalized intelligence, the ability to think abstractly, to create, to adapt to new situations, seems to require strategic forgetting. Perhaps this is why no species has evolved photographic memory as a standard feature. The cost is too high. A mind that remembers everything is a mind that can't think clearly about anything. We trade total recall for something more valuable. Wisdom, the ability to extract meaning from experience, to learn lessons rather than just accumulate data. Every piece of art, every scientific breakthrough, every act of forgiveness in human history was possible because we could forget. So what does this mean for you? Right now, as you hear these words, your brain is making choices. Some of this video will stay with you. Some will be deliberately, carefully deleted. And that deletion is not failure. It's curation. The memories you keep are the ones your brain decides matter. The ones you lose are cleared to make room for what's coming next. Every morning you wake up slightly different from the person who went to sleep. Not because you added anything, but because overnight, your brain edited the story of who you are, removed some details, softened some pain, made space for new experiences. This is not a bug. This is the most sophisticated feature of the most complex object in the known universe. Forgetting is how your brain says, "This moment is not forever. This pain will fade. This mistake does not define you.